So we have some time for Q&A. After they ask the question, can you repeat it so that we get it on the recording? Tom,
Can you wondering about the protocol for baiting the Turkestan roaches placement and amount?
Yeah, the placement should be where the cockroaches are either harboring or foraging. So if you can find the harborages and they can't be treated, sometimes the harborages themselves could be foamed or treated, but let's say they're inaccessible, you could place your bait as close as possible. So the same kind of strategy as if you're baiting for ants, is you're baiting where they harbor and or forage. Um, and then of course you have to comply with the label. So sometimes the label will require a certain amount of bait, like a certain mass per linear foot or per square foot. So you have to comply with that. And we also were using those stations. So we had to put them in areas that were not high traffic so they wouldn't get tampered with and kicked. We would either adhere or affix them to the hardscape, but even still, people kick them and trip on them. But yeah, generally just as close as possible to where you think the cockroaches are harboring and or foraging.
What kind of analysis would you be applying?
In this case, it was dependent on the population size. So at that school where we had the very large population, it's the maximum label rate for that product. It's 3 grams. And so that's like I think a tube is 30 grams. So that's like a tenth of a tube. It's a pretty large placement. But with a large population, and these are large cockroaches, they would eat it sometimes in 1 or 2 nights.
A tenth of a tube per what area or per?
You'd have to look at the label, but I think it's like I want to say it was like 20 or 40 linear feet. And the labels have different instructions for indoor versus outdoor application. And I can't mention product names, but yeah, we use 3 different products and they all have similar requirements.
Another question?
So for all this bait, can homeowners buy bait instead, or is it just, or it's only nice and season?
Oh, I was supposed to repeat the question.
Yeah.
So the question is, can unlicensed individuals purchase bait products such as what we used against the Turkestan cockroach? Yes, they can. So if you go to a retail point of sale, you'll see lots of different gel products for cockroaches. Most of them are labeled for indoor use only because they target German cockroaches, but there are a couple I saw one a couple days ago. I was in a hardware store, and they come in a larger tube, a larger application tube, and it mentions on the label, for large outdoor cockroaches. So some of them are labeled, and actually some of the actual ingredients are the same. You know, so indoxacarb, hydromethanon, these are consumer products that are out there.
If only consumers would read the label. That's another lecture for another day. Go ahead.
So you said the Turkestan only has breeding time per year, but is that for the whole state? I mean, when it's warmer, can it be more than that, or?
Yeah, so the question is about the life cycle of the Turkestan cockroach. We have observed, both in Northern California and Southern California, is that the adults mate and deposit eggs in early summer, so June, July. We've also observed all over the state that the adults die at the end of the year. So September, October, November, the adults are done. It doesn't matter if you're in San Diego or up in Redding. The adults do not overwinter. The overwintering is by the nymphs. So the nymphs hatch in summer, and so late summer you'll see a mix of sizes. You'll see the adults running around, you'll see the little nymphs running around, but only the nymphs are the ones that overwinter. So then the next year, they start coming out of their overwintering habitats March, April. So you're gonna see them soon, and they're all gonna be small. And so they're growing. As soon as they become adults, they fall in love, make love, and start laying eggs. So that will happen in June. No, that's a life cycle that we've observed just with the Turkestan cockroaches. Oriental cockroaches, most of the adults will also die during winter. But things like American cockroaches, which live underground in sewers, are not as tied to the seasonal cycles as these other species.
Now, so I'm just trying to picture the applications there for school campus for the base. So did you use the base just around the entry doors or access points?
So the question again is about bait placement at schools for Turkestan cockroaches. We did both. We applied bait anywhere that we saw cockroaches foraging. So that could have been around perimeters of buildings. It could have been in areas where people eat, like the outside the cafeteria. In some cases, it was by those bleachers where people were watching football and dropping their snacks everywhere. So what we did is we did night inspections to see where the foraging was occurring before we made our application. But yeah, the base stations were applied at the perimeters of buildings or in corners, and then the little bait combos I showed you made out of the PVC slip couplings were put in subterranean utility ports.
So the rat mites, you said mostly roof rats, but are they affecting any other rodents like deer mice or conger rats?
We've caught them in association with both roof rats and Norway rats. The literature suggests that they can also be found in association with house mice and deer mice. But it's hard to say sometimes if the collection of mice we're making is tied to a rodent population that's also on the site. So I haven't collected any off the animals, you know what I mean? But we think roof rats are the primary host, at least in the San Francisco area.
I've experimented with many of the non-glyphosate options for weed control and experienced the same thing of multiples going off market. One that seemed to work pretty consistently, and it was the caprage and acrylic acid one. But do you recall from the term which of the combinations have the best efficacy?
So there's a comment in the question that he's used some of the not the organic herbicides, non-glyphosate products, and has seen the shift of them getting off market. And the capric and acrylic acid combination is something that you've noticed is more effective. So I have noticed that more and more manufacturers are making products with the combination of those two, capric and acrylic acid. I think one of the products, maybe two that I showed, have both of those. So there's at least 4 products that I know of with capric and acrylic acid, both professional products and landscape products. So I intend to do another trial this year, or a few if I can, to incorporate some of these newer products that have come on the market. And that is what I think is going to be the winner in all of these. But it does also depend on the season, and the weather. If I were to give my full presentation, the contact herbicides work best at higher temperatures, so like 80 degrees or higher, and clear sunny days. But that's not always the case. So I'm trying to do the trials when it's shady conditions or cold conditions, warm conditions, to see how the data kind of shakes out. And there may be difference, like in the winter when it's cloudy, do it at this time of day, or make your application at this time of day, or use this product instead of this product. There's one product that we have been using that I saw a clear difference from using it in February versus the summer. But again, my trials are also only in Sacramento, so it's hard to draw conclusions for how it's gonna be for the rest of the state. So there's still a lot of work to do there. Yeah. More than what your question is.
Only contact birds, right? There's no.
Yeah, all of the materials, in my trials and most of the organic herbicides, if not all of them, are contact post-emergence. None of these have shown any pre-emergent activity. Yes, and then 3 weeks later, if the plants are established and mature, the root system is usually established enough that the plants will grow back from the base because it only will affect the foliage that it touches. And that is another aspect of this, that you have to have good coverage. So spray equipment and pressure and droplet size, like, your nozzle, all of that is important too. Yeah, a lot of different factors in there. Yes.
Instead of going back to the mines, do you foresee your research expanding into biological controls? So using like predatory insects as a form?
So the question is about biological control and whether it can be applied to indoor biting mites. Generally, people are reluctant to employ biological control agents indoors. For instance, there's a really effective egg parasitoid that attacks cockroach oophagy. It's a little wasp. People don't want to see that thing inside. So, yeah, generally, people don't want to release organisms inside their homes. We're talking about mites that are crawling around inside structures. So there may be some predators, and certainly there could be predatory mites that may eat them, but I don't foresee that they would ever be released in an indoor environment.
I was kind of leaning more so like on the outside, so kind of preventing the issue or an issue. So kind of like including them in your garden or something like that. Is there?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know a whole lot about which predators are most effective against these guys. Certainly, every animal on the planet has something else that's eating it. But I'm not sure which those would be in this case. If these mites are outside, they're much less likely to cause a problem. So if you've got roof rats in your tool shed or, under the retaining wall or something like that, it's much less of a problem than when they're in the crawl space or the attic space. But yeah, biological control is always a consideration within IPM.
Unless, of course, your chicken coop is right up against your window, like you showed.
Yeah,
Just inviting them at that point.
yeah. Lauren?
Certain temperature range where they're more likely to be around foraging.
Yeah, the question is about, is there a seasonality or temperature range associated with biting mites? They are always present in the nests of the rats and birds that they parasitize. They may be more active when it's warmer. They have faster generation times when it's warmer. But any time of the year, they can flare up, and it's in association with the rodent or bird population. So with the bird mites, we sometimes see spikes in activity in autumn, and it's because the migratory birds have left the nest. All right. And with rats, it could be in association with a control program. So yeah, there's not any particular season that is more associated with biting mites. They can happen at any time.
You said that there's really nothing, like there's no control for it alone, like you control the host. But after you control the host, is there anything, like any kind of sanitation or anything you can do to, stop it from spreading?
Yeah, so the question is about controlling wandering biting mites, perhaps after controlling the primary host. These guys can be killed with soaps, oils, pyrethroids, pyrethrins, and there are some products that pest control operators have had success with. But if you're spraying the inside of someone's home, you have to think about damaging the furnishings. Some of these materials and stain wood, or stain sheetrock. So there are some products, but I think first you have to remove the primary host. Because if you're only focusing on the mites, there's more being produced in the nest that are gonna keep coming out. Even the longest residual pyrethroids are only gonna give you, a week or so, maybe 2 weeks indoors, and then you have a residue. You have a pyrethroid residue on every surface. So the goal should be to remove the host. I haven't done any trials with those contact materials. I've just heard from pest control operators that there are a number that work. Yeah. Yes, Tom.
To that point, so does it take a while for the mite population to crash after you get rid of the host?
Yes, so the question is, how long does it take for the mites to crash after you get rid of the host? There's a lot of factors there: temperature, what was the population size, do they have secondary blood source? So some of the literature says 2 or 3 weeks. Some of the other literature says 60 days. So we tell people 60 days. Expect wandering mites 60 days after the last rat was removed.
We are at time.
We can take like 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay.
Just a quick one, you were using 3 different products for the baiting program. Are you rotating those or using those in combination on a single?
Yeah, so the question is about the baits for the cockroaches. We were not rotating our baits, and that's because they were 1-year interventions. But moving forward, the pest control operators at those sites do have plans to rotate. Remember, there's only 1 generation per year, so it's not the same resistance pressure that you would get from something like German cockroaches. But yeah, in general, we have to rotate our active ingredients. The good news is that they all worked great. Yes.
What are you using to attach your gel traps to the wall, like a Korean strip or something?
So in some cases, we actually fasten them to the hardscape. So we were working with the district, and so the district was invested in this project. So they actually would drill into masonry and then attach the stations with a bolt and a washer. But in other cases, we used adhesive, like an industrial adhesive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.